Hey, welcome everybody. I'm so excited. This week I'm speaking to Katie Lips, and what caught my eye, like your book, somehow I found out about your book. I don't even know how. You know, one of these things that happens and suddenly something pops up and it's like, oh my goodness, dive a bit deeper into that. And I was really, what caught my eye was that whole self-love story. And I thought, oh, it'd be so great to interview Katie for our group. So welcome, Katie. It's such a pleasure to have you here and to inspire us ladies to maybe lose a bit of weight and have a think about self-love. So welcome.
Thanks very much, Trish. It's great to be here.
Great. So tell me about your amazing transformational journey. I mean, I was looking at 38, what is it, 85 pounds. That's 38 kilos. My friends that are watching in Australia, or the people that, like me, I measure things in kilos. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, sure. So, like many people, I put on weight really gradually. I wasn't big as a kid, but in early adulthood, I started to put on a few pounds. And at first, I didn't really think very much of it. And then all of a sudden, it was quite a problem, and I was buying larger and larger clothes and felt quite miserable about myself. And then I found myself at about 238 pounds or 17 stone after I'd had my daughter. That's after I'd had my daughter, so like not still being pregnant, you know. And it was at that point that I decided enough's enough, because I'd been heavy and getting heavier for a number of years and I wasn't happy about it. So I know that some people say they can carry weight and they're fine. That's great. I wasn't one of those people, sadly. I was really miserable about it. And I knew that it was something I wanted to change. And I tried to change. I tried some of the diets that are out there and they just didn't work for me. It wasn't something that I could kind of do very easily. And, perhaps because I just had a child, it was like a big moment in my life where it's like, right, are you going to do something about this, or are you not going to do something about this and just live with the overweight forever? And I really didn't want to live with the overweight forever. So I decided that I was going to tackle it. And I didn't really know what that looked like at first. I didn't know what tackling it looked like. I knew that I could, obviously I needed to change what I was eating and how I was eating, because I was definitely overeating. And I also knew I needed to move my body more. I did quite a lot of walking to work, but I didn't really do any exercise that I would say I found in any way enjoyable. So I wasn't connected with my body. I wasn't really connecting with myself. And I was just a kind of bit of a miserable mess. And I did know, though, that what I needed to do was probably to focus on me first rather than jump into a weight loss program. And I knew that really it wasn't just about what I was putting in my body, it was what was going on up here in terms of, the decisions to kind of keep treating myself badly. And I was really treating myself badly. I drank a bit too much. I wouldn't say I had like an enormous drink problem, but I definitely drank a few times a week, like plenty of people do. But for me, that meant I put the pounds on, because it's not just the calories and the alcohol that I was consuming, but that made me have massive sugar cravings. And then I was mopping all of that up with lots of carbs and bread and pasta, which things for me just didn't really work. So I knew I was putting all this stuff into my body, being unhealthy, but I knew I had to fix my head first before really thinking about food. And so I did some research about self-love, and I thought to myself, yeah, I mean, I haven't been loving myself. I haven't been putting myself first. I haven't been kind of treating myself right. So self-love is like this to me now, sort of 8 years later. I know what it feels like. I help people develop a self-love practice. But when you're starting out, it's all new. It's all like, I don't know what to do. Where do I start? Do I start with self-care? Do I start with affirmations? Do I just tell myself I love myself in the mirror every day? And that was quite tough. So, and some of those things are good things to start doing, and some of them to me felt really awkward, like looking in the mirror and saying, I love me, I accept myself. It didn't gel for me at first. I had to really work at it. but I did start to work at it. And as I started learning a little bit about affirmations and just taking time for myself to start with, then I found it easier to notice food more and what I was eating and how I was eating. And the weight started to come off a little bit. And I thought, okay, there's something to this. Let's kind of keep going with that. And so I sort of dug deep in the self-love stuff, read an awful lot about it, tried lots of exercises that people recommended. Some of them worked, some of them I thought were terrible. As with anything, some things stick, some things don't. But it was definitely an area that I sort of knew if I focus on that first, then all the kind of things you need to learn about nutrition or exercise or finding time even to do any of this stuff, that then becomes much easier if you've got the foundations as to you've made a decision, you want to do something for yourself, you know why you're going to do it, and you can then visualize your path and where you're going. And if you can get all of those things set up, the actual mechanics of what you're eating or your fitness regime or whatever becomes easier. So over a course of about a year and a half, I lost all my overweight to get to a quote healthy weight. And healthy weight means different things to different people, but for me it meant the stigma of not being overweight in the kind of BMI category. So I did that. So I lost my 85 pounds, and my weight, I want to say, stayed under since. It hasn't quite. I did have a little fluctuation at a time when I was not practicing self-love as much as I should, and I was doing a very stressful job. When I saw what was happening, I went straight back to self-love first rather than diet first. That then enabled me to put the right things in place for diet and exercise, etc. And then that enabled me to kind of keep the weight off and maintain. And so I wrote a book about my weight loss journey and self-love in relation to weight loss, because I think it's a great catalyst. I think if you know you want to do something and make a big change in your life, but you found it hard, which so many people, especially women, find with weight, a good thing to focus on first is the self-love piece, because it makes everything else easier. So I wrote a book called Love Yourself and Lose Weight,
which I love. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And it talks about my story. There's kind of pictures of me on the back. I don't know if you can see them, but a big dramatic, my journey was physically dramatic. People who I knew before I lost weight don't tend to recognize me today. I really do look like a different person. But really the change for me was in here. But the most important thing about that self-love weight loss connection isn't that I love myself more now because I've lost weight. It's the opposite of that. It's that I learned self-love so that I could then lose weight and give myself the transformation that I wanted. But the transformation could have been something else. It could have been fitness, it could have been career, it could have been relationships. It's like the self-love bit for me needs to come first. It's not a result of weight loss, if you like.
Yeah, I get that, absolutely. And tell me, did things creep back in? Like, do you drink alcohol now?
I do, but in no way like I used to drink alcohol. And I think an important thing is I don't want to kind of scare people. So in my book, I talk about all the changes I've made, but I don't want people to think, oh my goodness, to lose weight, I've got to give up alcohol, start running every day, don't drink caffeine, stop, give up all caffeine, hardly eat sugar, because all those things together are like too enormous to do all at once in my mind anyway. So no, I don't drink as much alcohol as I used to drink. I haven't drunk any this year, not really because I'm doing dry January, just because I haven't been bothered or whatever. But these changes then aren't necessarily things you have to do. But when you're on a journey, I find, and I'm sure you know this, Trish, they're things you want to do, because you're enjoying the really good stuff that comes with these positive actions you're taking or positive choices you're making. And they in turn create further positive choices. So choosing to drink less alcohol, choosing to eat different foods. It's not like you can't have them, it's that that's something you want to achieve.
Sure. And I think, so for example, if a client or someone in this group, someone watching is full of self-doubt, self-sabotage, and self-loathing, which is so easy to fall into. I know I can self-sabotage coming from years of low self-esteem. It's so easy to then beat yourself up and think, oh my goodness, how did I get here? What would you start with? Because I know you love affirmations. I love affirmations as well. Is that a good place to start? Or what would be a really simple thing that someone could do straight away to get started to really improve that self-love?
Yeah, so I think I do like affirmations, and I like them for the reason that if you've never done them before, they might be really terrifying and they might feel really, really awkward. But you're taking a really simple but massive step forward. And they don't cost you anything, they don't take much time. They take a bit of time and you need to have some focus, but saying a simple affirmation to yourself, if you've never done it before, it's like, oh, okay, there's this whole world of thinking about myself. That I
I'm being interrupted. I'm recording. I'm sorry. So sorry.
It's okay. So an affirmation then, if you want to start with something, might look really simple as I love and accept myself. And many people have never said that to themselves. They've never said, I love myself, or just look in the mirror and say, it's okay, we're okay, I've got you, or, I accept you, or I accept myself, or whichever words you want to use, but just to sort of say, okay, I'm all right. I don't, a lot of people have never given themselves a hug or anything like that, or would find that terrifying, and maybe that is a bit terrifying to people, but it's not going to harm you, and often it can be quite shockingly rewarding to start doing things like this that may seem alien but actually give you a sense of comfort and connect you with yourself in a way that you haven't done before. So like a 101 thing to do if you've never, used affirmations is just I love and accept myself. Out loud if you can, in your head if you can't. Maybe it'll come out loud later, in the mirror if you want to, but not if you don't. Make it feel okay for you, and then become a bit more bold with it each time you practice it.
That's a really good tip. You know what I've done? I like recording them in my own voice. So on my phone, I've got a voice recorder. We've all got our voice recorder on our phone. You can download an app. And so all my affirmations I've recorded. So sometimes you don't want to be just sitting there saying them back to you, but if you have it as a recording, I know Jack Canfield, one of my first personal development tapes, had this like a tape in my Walkman, and he would say the affirmation and then there's a space to say it back. So I created my own affirmations on my phone in my own voice with a little space. So I can be lying in the bath and I can be saying my affirmations and it's my own voice, and then I can say them in my head or I can say them out loud to myself. And one of the biggest affirmations that I think has been very helpful for me, because I made a lot of poor choices in my 20s around a whole lot of things, was that I forgive myself. I love and forgive myself. I forgive myself for anything that I may have done in the past that I still judge myself for, because we can really, we can internalize all that judgment and all that regret around things that we've done in the past, that we can feel safe enough to let go of. So that's been a big one for me. So I think that's a really good strategy that you can easily start. Record a few on your phone. I know you've got some on your website, you've got some in your book, there's some on my website. Like I really, and even creating your own affirmations around your own goals. Like I am fit and healthy. I am lovable. I am whatever, like whatever the goal is, you can create an affirmation around that goal. And it's like building that bridge to get your thinking that yes, you can feel this, even though you might not feel it right now in this instant. It's like building that little bridge that you can get there.
Yes.
So that's amazing. So tell me, so was your daughter the biggest catalyst for change, or was that, what was the biggest catalyst for change for you?
I think she was the catalyst for the catalyst, if you know what I mean. So she was the reason why, right, you've got to do something about this now, I said to myself. And then the catalyst then is the self-love and feeling like I love and accept myself more today than I did then. Let's say no one's ever going to be 100%, right? So we're all a work in progress, but feeling more self-love then is a catalyst to doing all sorts of other things as well, like deciding to, help people lose weight as a career choice rather than continue my kind of corporate job, and to take risks and set up a business and do all these other things that you then want to do to kind of feel more like you're working to deliver the purpose that you want to deliver to the world and to help the people that you want to help. So yes, I think self-love is a catalyst for all sorts of things. And I don't think it's a selfish act at all. I think self-love helps you help other people more.
To step into that purpose. Isn't that amazing that when you do the work, then the purpose can change, like, or you can be much more aligned to purpose, and that purpose becomes much, it changes from being inward to something outward, and stepping into that energy of maybe then being of service and helping others. It can certainly be very enlightening when you get to that point in your transformational journey that you feel like you are able to step up and help others. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's what you do now, like you really step into that space of coaching other women, particularly women, or do you coach men as well?
So mainly I work with women. My book seems to have been bought and read mainly by women or a few men, but it seems to be something that resonates more with women. Or maybe I know men want to lose weight as well, but perhaps in different ways. And interestingly, I did a survey recently of some of my newsletter readers, just asking them to kind of comment on their weight loss ambition, and also what they struggled with in the past. And it's very different. So I think I know that men and women struggle in different ways with things, in terms of finding the motivation to lose weight, but also in the way that they do it as well. Like men seem to be able to kind of do harder things for longer, whereas women might get sort of fed up with things that just simply aren't right for them. They know maybe more that they're not right for them and not prepared to do things that aren't right. So they want to find a thing that is natural and sustainable for them. More. I mean, men want to do that also. But for example, there's a big difference in overeating. So another big passion of mine is helping people with mindful eating and learning to stop eating when you're full. So regardless of what the food is, just the fact of not eating everything on the plate, let's say. And men and women do that at different rates. So men will eat more of what's on their plate, but they won't worry about it as much as women. So women will then feel much worse about the fact that they've eaten everything on their plate, whereas men will be like, well, I ate everything on my plate, that's fine, even if they know it's perhaps causing them to gain weight. So I think we do have some, hugely stereotyping, but this has come from my sort of survey data, that people do respond differently to food and diet and regimes and sustainability, and to the self-esteem around weight loss as well.
It's a really interesting thing. I know the guys that come onto my program do it to the letter, get great results, and they don't need nearly the sort of hand-holding support and accountability. They just get on and do it. And women tend to need a lot more accountability and support and hand-holding through the process. Why do you think it is more so women that struggle with self-love?
Ooh. that's an important question, isn't it? That could go in all sorts of directions. I don't know. I mean, in a poll of one, I struggle with self-love because I suppose I just felt like I wasn't living my full potential. And I had like, and when I wrote my book, I thought, well, I've got to be honest with people who might read this and tell them what my, if I'm saying I put weight on because I didn't have enough self-love, why didn't I have enough self-love? Did a terrible thing happen to me that meant, I had some trauma in my life? Not really, no. I mean, you can feel like lacking in the self-love department just through kind of life's, hustle and bustle. And we
Yeah.
don't, when we grow up, we perhaps think we're all going to have a fabulous life, an amazing career, and meet our ideal partner and live happily ever after. And then it doesn't always go like that, does it? So there's always a few ups and downs and setbacks. And we all respond to them differently. And sometimes, and I'm not talking about big trauma here, I'm just talking about the kind of normal level of stuff.
Sure.
And I just had, I guess, a normal level of stuff, a few horrible things, but nothing that I would say has deeply wounded me. But the build up of lots of little things erodes your self-love. And I think that babies aren't born lacking self-love. They're confident, they ask for what they want, they know that they need to get it, all of this stuff. And over time, as we grow up, that sort of thing is eroded for some reason. Why do women struggle with it more than men? I don't know. We obviously link to our bodies and our sense of physical self-esteem and societal pressures to look a certain way. Maybe, luckily, things like that are changing, and plenty of women are challenging that. We don't want to have to look a certain way for men or for society, but maybe the fact that we don't fit a stereotype of beauty can be challenging for a lot of us.
Absolutely. Look, it's something I've given a lot of thought to this, and I can remember in the playground in primary school, I heard another girl say, "Oh, she's so in love with herself." And doesn't that put a barrier to feeling that that's okay? When someone says, oh, they're so full of themselves, or they're so in love with themselves, that's an ego thing. And yet self-love is so important. It's self-acceptance and forgiveness and all those sorts of things for ourselves are so important. Yet a comment like that to a 7-year-old girl can then sort of think, oh, well, you can't love yourself. You just, isn't that funny that's an early memory of mine that you think, oh, goodness, we're thinking about my own self-esteem and my own self-love and why we make certain choices, and thinking, I come from a really great family, great background, great, lovely parents, loving loving environment. Yet, then we can beat ourselves up. We get into this habit of self-shaming and sabotaging and not really honoring what we need. So it's interesting to have a think about, what was your earliest memory of any sort of feeling around self-love? Because that came up for me, as one of the questions. I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how that's been a limiting belief for me in later life. How does that show up later? So
and we're not taught it, are we? So no one's taught self-love or any aspect of his self-esteem. A lot of schools nowadays say they want kids to be confident and happy, but we don't I don't think we still have enough focus on what that means, and teaching children to respect themselves, and especially as we grow up through adolescence, to have that level of self-respect or kind of agency to like own your feelings and really think about putting yourself first. But the comment is interesting. It's like this idea that if you love yourself, it's bad, or that if you love yourself, you're somehow arrogant and really out there with, and actually that's probably a sign of not loving yourself very much, because if self-love isn't really about arrogance, it's not really about telling everyone how great you are, it's just about being comfortable with yourself so that you can then do the things you want to do. So it's
and having good healthy boundaries around what it is that you need, and being able to then communicate that, I think, is really important. So tell me, what do you think is the best time to eat? And I know this is, I focus a lot on individuality. We're all very, very different. But how do you know when's the best time to eat?
It's So, yes, I don't know. I agree with you. We're all different, and I think it's probably personal. My journey helped me learn when the best time to eat for me was, but I wouldn't necessarily want to, to prescribe that other people would eat at the same time. I also think it's really important to eat when you're hungry and not starve. So for several reasons. Personally, I don't do very well at fasting. I've tried it. It's not for me. And I think it's not for a lot of people, though it's very popular at the moment, and it does work really well for some people. But if it doesn't work for you, you've got to kind of be okay with that and not force it. But I like the idea, and certainly something that works for me is eating little and often. So eat a little bit, don't eat so much you feel really full. Don't stretch your stomach so that then you need more to fill it next time. Keep it so that you're just in what I call the hunger zone. So this idea that you never want to be massively hungry, but you also never want to be massively full. So you probably want to kind of be in the middle of that somewhere.
Yeah.
So you start to feel hungry. How hungry are you out of like 5, let's say? Well, you don't want to be 5 out of 5 hungry. You need to kind of eat when you're 2 to 3 out of 5 hungry, let's say. So you're not kind of weak and nearly faint, or you're not so hungry that you're going to eat really quickly and eat things you perhaps don't want to be eating. So wait till you know when you're hungry. Eat a little bit of food slowly. I like to do it mindfully and think about it and really enjoy it, because I think that helps people get the most pleasure from food. Learn to stop before you get too full, because you don't want to get to the other end of the scale where you're like really full. So the hunger zone for me is where you should be, and it doesn't really matter when. Like, different people will feel that at different times of day, I think. So for me, also, not eating late at night works, but that's kind of a slightly separate issue. But if I was really hungry really late at night, I would eat, because I don't want my body to go into sort of starvation mode. And I like to stay in that hunger zone of little bit hungry, little bit full, little bit hungry, little bit full, as opposed to massively hungry, massively full. So your kind of dips, your highs and dips are leveled out. So it's kind of more level. And then you don't get those big drops where you're like, I need to eat now.
Eat everything, like, give it to me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I do ask my clients, like, when was the last time you felt hungry? Because so often we don't feel hungry. We have no idea what that is like, to feel that slight bit of hunger. And also, how do you know when you feel hungry? Because your mind's playing tricks on you all the time. You could be bored, you could be thirsty, you could be irritated, you could be lonely, you could be all these things, and suddenly you think, oh, well, I must be hungry. But really, it's that stomach rumbling sort of sensation, that empty feeling, not that hangry feeling. We don't want to get, that anxious, like shaky, gonna fall over feeling, but certainly that little bit of tummy rumbling. When you get used to that feeling and you think, oh yeah, right, okay, that's hungry. It's not thirsty, it's not lonely, it's not bored. That's hungry.
Yeah.
So really listening to the tummy and the blood sugars, but not so much listening to the brain, because the brain just makes nonsense up all day long. We can really sort of, no, we're not listening to you. We're going to listen to the stomach. So how do you know when you're hungry?
Good question. So I drink a lot of water, so I hope that I'm not, when I feel hungry, that I'm not thirsty.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant point, Trish. Like, so many of us think we're hungry when actually we're thirsty. I like to drink water before I eat as well, because that sorts out the thirst issue and slows me down, so that when I eat, I am more conscious about it and more present, and ultimately eat less food. So how do I know I'm hungry? Practice and listening. So really listening to your body and how it feels. But it's a process, isn't it? So this is why like restrictive diets don't work for people when they're on like a program and you do it for 6 weeks, but you stop after 2.5 because it's hard. It's because you're not actually listening to your body. You're trying to force your body into a certain prescribed way of acting, let's say. And if you need to try trial and error. So you can try
Yeah.
a diet, but then see how it feels. Understand the time you eat, the speed you eat, the how long it takes you to eat, as well as the food itself is important. And then it's trial and error. And so for me, like 8 years later after starting my journey, I'm still learning about my body and what it needs. And also, our bodies change as we get older, especially for women in their late 40s. It's really important to sort of listen to those signs and think, oh, okay, now porridge does this for me in the mornings, whereas it used to do that for me. And we do have to really hear what our bodies are telling us as well.
It's so good. I've had clients that, time restricted eating, where we're extending that window, maybe of not eating for 12 to 14 hours overnight, can work really well for some people.
Yeah.
Fasting can work really well for some people, but especially as we're getting perimenopause, menopause, if that puts you into a state of stress, that is not helpful. And it is about trying these things maybe for a few days and seeing how that makes you feel and sticking to it for long enough to know how it feels. Like I'm definitely not driven by eating first thing in the morning, but skipping breakfast is not ideal. So, I like my ideal window is eating something around about 9 to 10, whereas my husband and my son, my 12-year-old, as soon as they wake up in the morning, the first thing they ask, and it has always been this way, what's for breakfast? So driven by their stomach, have to eat, they will get, they'll get hangry. So listen to your body, I think, is a really good bit of advice, and trying things and knowing that not everyone's going to suit fasting or intermittent fasting or time restricted eating for sure. And especially if you're prone to stress and you've got kids and demands and perimenopause or menopause going on, then it may not be the best thing for you. So it's a really good point. So give us a little wave of your book again, so people know what your book looks like if they're looking for it on all the usual channels. I love that. It looks amazing. It's very catchy. And where can people find you on your website, etc.? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I talk a lot on my website and blog at katielips.com. And people can find my book on Amazon in a variety of different formats. I've also written a self-love book, pure self-love, no weight loss involved. That's on Amazon as well. So if you search for Katie Lips on Amazon, you can find me and my books.
That is amazing. It's so great to have you on. I'm really looking forward to, reading more about, your blog and everything. I think it's beautifully written, really easy to understand, and so many good nuggets. So I might have to invest in the self-love book as well. So thanks so much for being a guest. And please, if you're watching, you want to reach out to Katie, please do so via her website. Make sure you grab a copy of her book. I think it'd be really useful.
Thanks very much, Trish. And I do have a copy of the Hunger Zone PDF, which explains my kind of approach to when to eat, available on my website, on my blog. And also, I think through there you can get a PDF copy of my self-love book for free, if that's something that might be helpful to you. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, Trish. Thank you very much.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being on. We look forward to connecting more in the future.